3. Kagi and Agi. On June 4, 1942, Japanese forces attacked the U.S. military base at Midway Atoll in the North Pacific. Navy Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto wanted to eliminate America's carrier forces in the region and initially considered launching a second attack on Pearl Harbor. However, he knew that Pearl Harbor was prepared with more than enough air power to respond to an attack, which was risky and would likely lead to an increased presence of American ships in the Pacific. So he targeted Midway instead, as part of a bigger plan to lure U.S. aircraft carriers into fatally compromising situations. To conceal the full extent of the attacking forces, Yamamoto planned for the Japanese fleet to approach Midway in phases, with the supporting force of battleships and cruisers trailing the carrier fleet by several hundred miles. Yamamoto was blissfully unaware that the Americans had partially broken the main Japanese naval code, dubbed JN-25 by the US, and had deciphered correspondences containing crucial details of the attack plan. In anticipation of the attack, US Navy Admiral Chester W. Nimitz summoned all available flight decks to Midway. Crews at Pearl Harbor worked around the clock to repair the USS Yorktown, which was originally slated to be out of service for several months. They restored it to seaworthy status within 3 days, and repairs continued as the carrier sailed to the anticipated battle site, where it was joined by the aircraft carriers USS Enterprise and USS Hornet. As the fragmented Japanese fleet approached, they had no idea that the Americans were prepared and awaiting their arrival. The fighting had already begun when US forces located Japan's carrier fleet and launched an air attack, striking the Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiru with heavy bombs. Munitions and fueled aircraft aboard the ships burst into flames, and before long, the fires were out of control. As a result, all 4 carriers were destroyed, slashing Japan's carrier fleet in half and securing a decisive victory for the Americans in the 4-day battle. It wasn't without losses though, as the American fatalities were estimated at just over 300. Roughly 150 aircraft were destroyed, along with 1 destroyer and the USS Yorktown. Japanese fatalities, on the other hand, were estimated at over 3,000, including 100 highly trained pilots who couldn't be replaced. Nearly 250 aircraft were lost as well. But it was the loss of the aircraft carriers that had a crippling effect on Japan's naval power, and the Japanese Navy never fully recovered throughout the rest of the war. The unexpected failure to lure American carriers into a trap marked a turning point in the war that tipped the balance of power in favor of the Allies and put Japan in a defensive position. And because of this, military leaders were forced to rethink their strategies. In 2019, a team of deep-sea explorers located the wrecks of the Kaga and the Akagi, roughly 1,300 miles northwest of Pearl Harbor, in a sprawling conservation area called the Papahanaumo Kuakea Marine National Monument. The ships were found resting at a depth of roughly 18,000 feet, nearly 3.5 miles below the surface. Photos captured by a remotely operated vehicle revealed that parts of the wreck are surprisingly still intact. Until then, the only other ship destroyed in the battle that had ever been found was the Yorktown, which was located in 1998. Due to their extreme depth and because all 3 wrecks are considered underwater war graves under US law, there are no plans to raise or disturb the sites. Built during the 1920s, the 855-foot-long Akagi was originally intended as a battle cruiser. Construction ground to a halt in 1922 when Japan signed the Washington Naval Treaty, which imposed strict limits on the size and weight of battleships in an effort to prevent a global arms race like the one that preceded World War I. However, the agreement allowed for the conversion of large battleships into aircraft carriers. So construction resumed in 1923. The 812-foot Kaga was also intended as a battleship, but it was built as an aircraft carrier in accordance with the treaty's terms. The dive-bombing attacks on Japan's aircraft carriers during the Battle of Midway came without warning, and any efforts by the Akagi and the Kaga to evade fire were done in vain. After being hit with a 1,000-pound bomb, the Akagi was too damaged to function, but continued to float. It was deliberately scuttled and abandoned. The Kaga was hit with a 1,000-pound bomb and at least 3 500-pound explosives, causing 80,000 pounds of bombs and torpedoes on board to burst into flames. It was clear that even trying to put out the out-of-control blaze would be a lost cause, so the surviving crew members were forced to abandon ship. More than 800 of the Kaga's sailors lost their lives in the attack. To prevent public morale from plummeting, Japanese leaders went out of their way to keep news of their loss at the Battle of Midway quiet. The Kaga's injured survivors were quarantined, not for their health, but so they couldn't spread word of the humiliating defeat. Some were hospitalized for a year, while those who recovered were sent back into battle without being allowed to contact their families. Have you ever heard of any other amazing military discoveries that we should cover in one of our upcoming videos? Let us know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. 2. USS Eagle 56. Toward the end of World War I, Henry Ford facilitated the construction of 60 Eagle-class submarine chasers for the U.S. Navy. The war was pretty much over by the time they were built, and none of them saw action in the conflict. They handled notoriously poorly at sea, and by the time World War II rolled around, only 8 Eagle-class vessels were still in service. One of them was the USS Eagle 56, or PE-56, which patrolled the Atlantic along the American East Coast. The 200-foot-long ship managed to avoid destruction during one of the heaviest periods of U-boat attacks, known as the Second Happy Time in Germany, which lasted from January to August of 1942. On April 23, 1945, just 2 weeks before the Germans surrendered, the Eagle 56 exploded and broke in half, roughly 3 miles off Cape Elizabeth, Maine. It was the only Eagle-class ship to sink during the war. 13 of the vessel's 62 crew members survived. During an inquiry the following week, they reported seeing a submarine shortly before they attacked. They described a red and yellow emblem on its tail, matching the markings of the German U-boat U-853. A classified naval report would later reveal that the U-boat was known to be operating in the waters off Maine at the time. Despite eyewitness testimony and intel suggesting that the Eagle 56 had been torpedoed, Navy officials ruled that one of the ship's boilers had exploded. Naval historian Paul Lawton realized that there was something wrong with this conclusion in 1998, when a chat with a pair of brothers prompted him to review official military records. During the conversation, the men blamed U-853 for the sinking of their father's ship, the Eagle 56. Lawton didn't recognize it as a U-boat sinking, despite his extensive knowledge of U-boat operations. And there was no record of the incident in the Navy's files, although German records mention the sinking of Eagle 56 at the hands of U-853. While reviewing the Navy's record of the ship itself, Lawton discovered that its construction was far more modern than military officials apparently realized. Boilers weren't known to explode with the steam turbine technology and safety features that the Eagle 56 had, and the type of equipment it did have wouldn't have created nearly as big of an explosion as the surviving crew members recalled seeing. In addition, the vessel had undergone a thorough inspection 10 days before it blew up, eliminating the likelihood of a mechanical disaster. However, a torpedo could have easily caused the ship to lift out of the water and break into two, subsequently creating the 300-foot water column that the survivors described. Having been presented with convincing evidence, the Naval Historical Center reclassified the wreck as a combat loss in 2001, and its service members were posthumously awarded with a Purple Heart. A years-long search to find the wreck began in 2014, but by 2018, they hadn't found a single glimpse of the lost vessel. But halfway through the year, an exploration team finally located the Eagle 56, roughly 5 miles off the coast of Maine, at a depth of 300 feet. Footage captured by divers revealed that the ship's boilers were fully intact, putting to rest rumors that they'd accidentally exploded. It's unclear why the military was so intent on classifying the disaster as an accident, but now that the record has been set straight, the team that discovered the Eagle 56 has accomplished their goal of giving the ship its rightful place in history, ensuring that its story gets told. 1. Nazi Codes Deciphered. During World War II, there was little any military could do to prevent enemy forces from intercepting their communications, so they communicated using coded messages. Entire teams were dedicated to cracking enemy codes, often with great success, but Allied codebreakers were thrown for a loop when it came to Germany's Enigma code. The Enigma cipher device that the Nazis used was highly sophisticated. Its settings and subsequent codes were changed every single day, which meant that a daily key was required in order for recipients to be able to read their messages. During the interwar period in 1932, Polish cryptologists broke Enigma messages for the first time by reverse engineering the machine. This led to the creation of a deciphering device called the bomb, which was designed specifically for decoding Enigma messages. However, this technology became obsolete in 1938, when the Germans created an advanced and more secure version of the Enigma machine that made messages even more difficult to crack. Experts continued working tirelessly to decipher the code, unaware that the Germans had upgraded their technology. But the Polish team shared what they knew with British experts at the Bletchley Park Intelligence Center in Buckinghamshire. At one point, the cryptologists began to believe that the code might be unbreakable, which was a dismal realization at a time when German U-boats were sinking merchant ships at a rate that perilously threatened the Allied war effort. But they kept trying, and their efforts finally paid off thanks to Alan Turing, a British mathematician. Turing invented an updated version of the bomb deciphering machine that the Polish team had created for deciphering the earlier and less complex Enigma codes. The machine proved to be a game changer, greatly speeding up the deciphering process and leading to the decryption of thousands of messages. But some of the encrypted correspondences proved too difficult for experts to crack, including messages that were discovered after the war. 3 messages in particular seemed especially impossible to decipher. 2 were left behind by experts at Bletchley Park, and 1 was found with the skeleton of a homing pigeon in 1982. The scrambled letters were so mystifying that cryptologists wondered if there was an extra level of coding involved for added protection. During the 1990s, the academic journal Cryptologia published the coded messages and challenged readers to try their hand at deciphering them. At that point, the most anyone knew about the 3 messages was that they each contained up to 27 different 5-letter code groups. A breakthrough finally came in the early 2000s, when a German violinist and cryptology enthusiast named Stefan Krah created a code-breaking software program called M4. He collaborated with fellow cryptography fans to crack the messages using the innovative software, and within a month, they successfully decoded one of the 3 messages. It stated, "Forced to submerge during attack. Depth charges. Last enemy location, 0830, Naval Grid AJ 9863, 220 degrees, 8 nautical miles. I am following the enemy. Barometer, 1014 millibar. Tendency falling. North-northeast 4, visibility 10. A check against existing records revealed that the message was sent on November 25, 1942, by German naval commander Captain Lieutenant Hartwig Lux, who captained a U-boat known as U-264. At the time, the sub was in the North Atlantic conducting its first patrol. 5 days before the coded message was sent, the vessel was attacked by a Norwegian corvette, the HNOMS Potenella, but sustained no damage. This was quite possibly the attack referenced in the message. Less than a month after cracking the first code, a member of Krah's team decrypted another one of the long unsolved messages, sent by German naval commander Hermann Schroeder, who captained U-boat U-623. The seemingly uneventful correspondence describes seeing nothing along an Allied convoy route amid heavy fog. U-623's wartime service consisted of a training patrol mission, followed by an active service patrol, which began in December 1942. During its second patrol, the sub participated in 5 coordinated attacks on Allied merchant ships with other U-boats, known as wolf packs. But the vessel never sank any ships, and in 1943, it was struck by depth charges in the North Atlantic. while attempting to join a wolf pack during an attack on an Allied convoy. In 2013, after more than 10 years of the M4's project's launch, the third message was finally deciphered. Intercepted by the British destroyer HMS Hurricane in 1942, it contains information about how much fuel was left on board the vessel it was sent from and how long the U-boat's provisions would last. It also mentions a need for binoculars and that there were only 4 working pairs on the ship. However seemingly uneventful these messages may seem, those who were curious about them were satisfied to know that they'd finally been solved, scratching a decades-long itch among history buffs and cryptology fans alike. 10. The Kenan K7. The Kenan K7 was a remarkable aircraft that was ahead of its time. It was designed and tested in the Soviet Union in the early 1930s by Konstantin Kalinin, a World War I aviator and Soviet aircraft designer. It was one of the biggest aircraft built before the jet age, with a wingspan of 173 feet, 53 meters, and a length of 91 feet, 28 meters. It had 7 engines, 6 on the wing leading edge and 1 at the rear. It could carry up to 120 passengers, or 9.6 tons, 9,600 kilograms of bombs. Kenan K7 was not only huge, but also versatile. It had a military function, with machine gun turrets in the underwing pods that also housed the fixed landing gear. It could also serve as a transport or passenger plane, with spacious cabins inside the thick wings and fuselage. It had a range of 1,553 miles, 2,500 kilometers, and a top speed of 145 miles per hour. The Kenan K7 was an impressive feat of engineering that demonstrated Soviet innovation and ambition. Unfortunately, it also faced many technical problems and political opposition. Only 1 prototype was built. It was flown for a total of 11 hours before it crashed in November 1933, killing 14 people on board. Project was then cancelled, and Kenan was executed during Stalin's purges in 1938. The Kenan K7 remains a fascinating example of aviation history that deserves more recognition and appreciation for its bold design and potential. 9. F35 Fighter Jet. The F-35 Fighter Jet is a next-generation American aircraft that has become the world's most powerful advanced military plane. It's designed to serve 3 of the Pentagon's services: Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, and to be integrated into nations' fleets, providing nation-to-nation, mill-to-mill, and service-to-service capabilities. The F-35 is designed to be stealthy and provide robust situational awareness to the pilot during attacks on ground targets, and when fighting in air-to-air engagements. Features an advanced helmet-mounted display system that melds information from multiple sensors into a single view. It is also equipped with a distributed array of electro-optical sensors that provide situational awareness in a sphere around the aircraft, enhanced missile warning and aircraft warning systems, as well as day-night pilot vision. This technology has made the fighter jet an all-weather, stealthy, multi-mission aircraft that can perform both air superiority and strike missions. The aircraft is currently in use with 9 countries, including the United States, Japan, Australia, Britain, and Italy. Despite the aircraft's success, it has been plagued by delays, cost overruns, and technical glitches. That prompted the Pentagon to extend the service lives of older combat jets in hopes that they'll be able to meet future needs. The problem with these extensions is that they don't guarantee the fighters will be able to keep up with the new challenges, a government watchdog says. One major source of the issue is a shortage of replacement parts. This prompted Lockheed Martin to begin fronting money to buy spares in advance, but it's not clear that the company will be able to get them to the F-35s when they need them. 8. F-18 Super Hornet. The F-18 Super Hornet is a powerful fighter jet that can handle various missions, such as air superiority, fighter escort, reconnaissance, aerial refueling, close air support, air defense suppression, and day-night precision strike. It's an upgraded version of the F-18 Hornet, with better aerodynamics, avionics, stealth features, and combat range. The The Super Hornet can carry up to 17,750 pounds, 8,051 kilograms of weapons on 11 hardpoints, including air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles, bombs, and pods. It can also operate from aircraft carriers and land bases with minimal modifications. The Super Hornet is the mainstay of the U.S. Navy Carrier Air Wing and has been deployed in various conflicts since 2002. It's also used by Australia and Kuwait as their primary fighter aircraft. The Super Hornet is one of the most advanced and versatile fighter jets in the world today. Would you like to fly in a jet? Tell us in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. 7. V22 Osprey. The V22 Osprey is the most versatile military aircraft in history. It's designed to combine the functionality of a helicopter with the long-range, high-speed cruise performance of an airplane. It was conceived as a multi-mission tilt rotor and is now in service with the Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. The Marines alone plan to operate 360 Ospreys, and the success of expeditionary operations today relies on the Osprey's ability to adapt to changing requirements. As such, the Marines need to replace their current fleet with newer Ospreys in order to maintain their performance of expeditionary missions, and to support a variety of emerging mission areas that will likely arise in future conflicts. Despite its impressive capabilities, there have been serious challenges to the Osprey program, including a number of crashes and flaws in the Osprey's flight control software. These problems have led to a redesign of it that has fixed many of these issues. And now the Osprey is nearing full-rate production. It's now undergoing a series of field evaluations by a broader range of users to ensure that it continues to meet its missions in the most effective manner possible. This process has also brought the Osprey to the attention of international customers, and the Japanese Self-Defense Force became the first foreign military sales customer in 2015. In November 2015, the Japanese began deploying their V-22s in earnest. Currently, the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force operates 5 of the aircraft, with plans to expand that number in the future. 6. A10 Warthog Thunderbolt II. The A10 Warthog Thunderbolt II is a storied aircraft that has been flying proudly for the United States Air Force since 1977. It is the only production aircraft built for close air support, a role it has mastered in multiple combat zones around the globe. It's a specialized close air support (CAS) aircraft, tasked with interdiction, forward air controller airborne, counter-surface attack (CSAR), and strike control and reconnaissance missions. Combines a heavy weapons load with low-level maneuverability, an extensive combat radius, long loiter time over the battlefield. They fly low, slow strikes at 300 knots or less against ground targets, like tanks and other armored vehicles, with a 30mm GAU-8A Gatling gun that is capable of destroying heavy armor while protecting the pilot in a titanium armored cockpit. As the world's tensions continue to rise, however, America's aging A-10 airframes are increasingly seen as a relic of a bygone era of warfare. As such, they're quickly dwindling in service. Today, the aging A-10 airframes are being relegated to standoff weapon integration roles. This is where the Air Force can use its assets, such as a reprogrammed F-22 Raptor or a B1B Lancer bomber, to cobble together fighter-like systems at minimal cost without the need for lengthy R&D cycles. The A-10 Warthog is an example of how the Air Force can find its value in a 21st century fight by leveraging its existing capabilities and assets, even when its airframes are deemed unfit to operate. That is the vision behind the new Pacific Air Force's exercise, called Operation Iron Thunder, that is bringing together disparate air assets to help the U.S. send a message of deterrence to a global adversary. 5. B-2 Spirit Bomber. The B-2 Spirit Bomber is the world's most advanced stealth bomber. Designed for the United States Air Force to penetrate deeply into enemy territory, it's a multi-role bomber capable of delivering both conventional and nuclear weapons. Developed by Northrop, the aircraft uses state-of-the-art stealth technology to help it survive highly dense anti-aircraft defenses. Its wing design combines low observability and high aerodynamic efficiency while maximizing the airframe's lethality. To protect the aircraft, its designers used a variety of radar-absorbing coatings and materials that obfuscate the heat signature of engines and wing surfaces. They also placed heat-absorbing tiles around the exhaust of each engine to prevent a heat signature from forming during re-entry. As the first bomber ever designed and built with such technology, the Spirit bomber has become a symbol of American power and a key tool in the Air Force's arsenal for global strike operations. The aircraft enables commanders to launch bombing missions anywhere, anytime, and destroy targets without fear of detection or damage. One of the B-2 Spirit bomber's most powerful abilities is its ability to collect, process, and disseminate battlefield information with Joint Force commanders or other local first responders worldwide. This allows for rapid targeting of potential targets, and if necessary, a bomber's ordnance could be deployed directly to a target's surface for further destruction. To keep the Spirit bomber flying, Air Force pilots and maintenance teams must continually improve its readiness. The small fleet size, parts obsolescence, and sensitive low observable coatings and structures are all a challenge. 4. SR71 Blackbird. The SR71 Blackbird was developed and built by Lockheed and Skunk Works, Lockheed's advanced development programs. It was the world's first aircraft to be constructed almost entirely of titanium. It was built to fly at Mach 3.2+ and reach altitudes of up to 85,000 feet. 25,908 meters. This enabled it to be a platform for a wide range of aeronautical research activities, including high-speed and high-temperature instrumentation, atmospheric studies, sonic boom characterization, and thermal protection materials. In addition to high-speed flight, the Blackbird also required precision navigation and eland gathering. These requirements pushed the limits of what was possible, and the team worked to meet them. To do this, Skunk Works engineers designed a series of innovations that were new at the time, but have become commonplace in today's aviation. For example, the Blackbird's auxiliary engines had a very complex engine-to-air interface that allowed them to continuously use afterburners. The airframe, Blackbird's primary structure, was built almost exclusively of titanium and other exotic alloys that could withstand the intense heat generated by sustained high-speed flight. The airframe's surface heated up to more than 260 degrees Celsius when at full velocity, and the airplane absorbed more heat than any other flying machine in history. Despite this, the Blackbird was able to cruise at Mach 3.2+ for more than an hour at a time. This is a record that still stands more than 50 years after it was created. Over the years, the SR-71 Blackbird was used for a variety of missions to provide detailed, mission-critical reconnaissance for the U.S. Air Force. These flights were critical to our ability to protect our nation's interests, which made the SR-71 one of the most important aircraft in American history. 3. P82 Twin Mustang. The P82 Twin Mustang was a long-range bomber escort fighter developed by North American Aviation to meet the Air Force's need for a new aircraft. It had two P-51 Mustang fuselages bolted together on a common center wing. The unique design was meant to reduce pilot fatigue during long-range bomber escort missions. The twin-boom configuration carried two pilots, one to fly the left cockpit and the other to navigate. Early production models furnished both cockpits with identical controls, enabling the crew to switch off pilot duty and allowing them to be safely operated to the full extent of the aircraft's long-range capability. A long dorsal fin was incorporated into the design to improve stability. The landing gear was hinged in the fuselage and retracted across the wing into the common center wing, giving it an unusual 4-point stance on the ground. Flight crews sat in adjustable seats designed to alleviate the discomfort of long patrols, and had the option of disengaging their rudder pedals so they could stretch their legs without having to move the rudder. A large SCR-720C or APS-4 radar was incorporated into an under-fuselage pod, which the operator sat in the starboard cockpit. The P-82 was a success as an escort fighter, but it also served in night fighter and all-weather interceptor roles. Its performance, however, was compromised by the fact that pilot exhaustion was a problem during long-range bomber escort flights. It was also vulnerable to enemy ground fire, and a third of them were lost in action. 2. B1B Lancer, the bone. The Rockwell, now part of Boeing, B1B Lancer, is a 4-engine, variable sweep wing supersonic strategic bomber used by the United States Air Force. The bomber was originally developed as a replacement for the B-52 Stratofortress and entered first service in 1986. Its initial mission was to deliver nuclear weapons to Soviet targets. Its first decade was dominated by nuclear deterrence, but the rise of missile defense and the collapse of the Soviet Union led to the Lancer's shift into conventional weapons. It now supports Air Force Central Command's multi-mission role, carrying the largest payload of guided and unguided weapons in its inventory. The aircraft's high-speed flight envelope makes it extremely survivable, as does its low radar cross-section, which is less than half the size of a B-52's. As a result, it has become one of the most effective aircraft in the world for conducting long-range operations. In April 2018, the Lancer became a key participant in delivering weaponry against targets in Syria, launching 19 JASSM cruise missiles from a KC-135 tanker. It also reached operational capacity for LRASM, long-range anti-ship missiles, which are capable of destroying targets at far greater distances and in highly contested airspace. As a result of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, all Lancers have been rendered non-nuclear. Though the aircraft's original purpose is gone, the legacy of the Lancer is still very much intact, especially in the eyes of nations and news outlets around the globe. 1. C-130 Hercules. The C-130 Hercules is the premier tactical airlift aircraft. It flies throughout the world and is used for airlift, aerial spraying, search and rescue, Arctic-Antarctic ice resupply, and natural disaster relief missions. It is a highly versatile airlifter and can serve as an assault transport, mid-air space capsule recovery, aeromedical evacuation, helicopter refueling, and even land with skis on snow or ice. The C-130 Hercules is a medium-range, 4-engine turboprop aircraft. It has a gross weight of 155,000 pounds and a cruising speed of 360 miles per hour, 579 kilometers per hour. The power plant is made up of 4 Allison T56A15 turboprop engines, rated at 4,300 horsepower each. These engines are mounted below the aircraft's wings and can be shut down to save fuel. The Hercules is operated by Air Force, Marine Corps, and Air National Guard forces. Its primary mission is to provide the last logistic mile in support of military operations worldwide. The Lockheed Martin Hercules, originally named YC-130, is the world's best-selling military transport plane. The aircraft is capable of performing an encyclopedic range of missions, has earned many accolades over its storied career. Today, the C-130J Super Hercules continues to set new records in performance. It flies farther at higher cruise speeds, takes off and lands in shorter distances, and climbs faster and higher than its predecessors. The J-30 also has a larger payload capacity, improved cargo compartment efficiency, and greater life cycle cost savings.
Number 10. The Empress of Ireland. The wreck of the Empress of Ireland was one of the worst maritime disasters in Canadian history. It happened on May 29, 1914, when a British-built ocean liner collided with a Norwegian ship called the Storstad in thick fog near the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. The Empress sank in just 15 minutes, killing over 1,000 passengers and crew members. Most of the victims were Canadian or British immigrants who were returning home or visiting relatives. The wreck was caused by human error, poor visibility, and unfortunate timing. Both captains made poor decisions, resulting in their ships colliding. The fog reduced visibility to almost zero and made communication difficult between ships. The collision happened at night, when most passengers were asleep in their cabins and had no time to escape. The wreck had lasting impacts on maritime safety, salvage operations, and historical preservation. It raised awareness about fog signals, navigation lights, life-saving equipment, and emergency drills. It sparked legal disputes between the owners of both ships over liability and compensation. It inspired salvage operations that recovered artifacts from the sunken ship. It was also designated a Canadian National Historic Site in 2009 and is a popular diving destination for explorers. Number 9. The Seaborn Spirit. The Seaborn Spirit was a luxury cruise ship that operated for Seaborn Cruise Line from 1989 to 2015. It was known for its high-end amenities, intimate atmosphere, and exotic destinations. However, it also faced a terrifying ordeal in 2005 when it was attacked by pirates off the coast of Somalia. In the early morning hours of November 5, 2005, a mothership launched 2 pirate speedboats that intercepted the Spirit while it was traveling from Alexandria, Egypt to Mombasa, Kenya. She had 115 passengers on board. The pirates attempted to board the cruise liner and seize hostages by using rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns. The crew of the Spirit fought back with a sonic weapon that emitted a loud noise to deter the attackers. The captain also increased the speed and changed course to outrun them. After an hour-long chase, the ship managed to escape with minor damage and 1 crew member injured by shrapnel. The Spirit reached the Seychelles safely on November 7, 2005, where it was inspected and repaired. It then continued its voyage to Singapore as planned. The passengers praised the crew for their bravery and professionalism during the attack. The Seaborn Spirit's wreck is now on a beach in Alang, India, where it was scrapped in 2017. It's a reminder of both its elegance and adventure as a cruise ship. Number 8. The SS Eastland. During the early 20th century, the passenger ship SS Eastland ran on Lake Michigan. For its quick and comfortable trips, it was dubbed the Speed Queen of the Great Lakes. The biggest marine disaster in American history occurred there, nevertheless, on July 24, 1915. That day, the Eastland was hired by Western Electric Company to transport its employees and their families to a picnic in Michigan City, Indiana. Over 2,500 people boarded the ship at a dock on the Chicago River. The vessel was already unstable due to design flaws and recent modifications that increased the ship's weight. As passengers moved around on the deck, the ship began to tilt dangerously. At 7:28 a.m., before it even left the dock, the Eastland rolled over onto its port side. Many people were trapped inside or crushed by furniture and equipment. Others fell into the murky water or were pulled under by suction. Despite rescue efforts by nearby boats and bystanders, 844 people lost their lives that day. The Eastland disaster shocked and saddened Chicago and the nation. It also sparked investigations and lawsuits that lasted for years. The cause of the tragedy was never conclusively determined. The Eastland was eventually sold to the U.S. Navy and converted into a gunboat named the USS Wilmot. It served until 1945 and was scrapped in 1946. The wreck of the SS Eastland remains one of Chicago's most haunting stories. It's also a reminder of how quickly life can change in an unexpected moment. Number 7. The Costa Concordia. A division of Carnival Corporation called Costa Cruises ran the cruise ship known as the Costa Concordia. It was Italy's largest cruise ship at the time of its introduction in 2005. Lavish amenities on board included 4 swimming pools, a casino, and a spa. It could accommodate 3,780 guests. The Costa Concordia, which had 4,252 passengers on board, was traveling in the Mediterranean Sea on January 13, 2012, close to the island of Giglio. In order to execute a salute maneuver, the captain, Francesco Schettino, diverted the intended course and guided the ship closer to the land. He erred in his distance estimation, struck a submerged rock, and tore a gash in the hull measuring 160 feet wide. The ship started to take water and tilt to one side. The crew delayed issuing an evacuation order for more than an hour while chaos and confusion ensued among the passengers. Many lifeboats were unusable due to the angle of the ship. Some people jumped into the water or used ropes and ladders to reach land. Others waited for rescue boats or helicopters to arrive. The evacuation lasted for more than 6 hours. By then, 32 people had died and 64 were injured. The captain abandoned ship before all the passengers were safe and was later convicted of manslaughter and other charges. The Costa Concordia sank near Giglio for more than 2 years before being refloated and towed away for scrap in 2014. The disaster cost billions of dollars in damages and compensation claims. It also raised questions about safety standards and regulations in the cruise industry. What's the worst cruise you've ever been on? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. Number 6. The Georges Philippe. The Georges Philippe was a French ocean liner that was built in 1930 by the Maritime de France Company. It was named after Georges Philippe, a French shipbuilder and CEO of the company. The ship was designed to carry passengers and cargo between France and Asia and had luxurious facilities such as a swimming pool, a cinema, and a library. On April 18, 1932, the Georges Philippe departed from Marseille on her maiden voyage to Yokohama. She carried 283 passengers and 297 crew members. Among them were famous personalities such as Albert Londres, a renowned journalist. However, on May 16, 1932, a fire started in one of the staterooms as the ship was traveling in the Gulf of Aden, close to Yemen. Fueled by combustible cargo and hardwood furnishings, the fire soon spread throughout the ship. With the help of hoses and extinguishers, the team attempted to put out the fire, but to no avail. In a panic, the travelers ran for the lifeboats. Unclad, several of them dove into the water. The fire raged for hours until it reached the engine room and caused an explosion that split the ship in two. The Georges Philippe sank with many people still on board or in the water. Only 256 people survived out of the 580 on board. The cause of the fire was never conclusively determined, but some suspect arson or sabotage. The wreck of the Georges Philippe remains one of France's worst maritime disasters. Number 5. The Sea Breeze. The Sea Breeze was a cruise ship that had a long and troubled history. It was built in 1958 and had changed owners and names several times. In 2000, it was operated by Premier Cruise Lines, a company that went bankrupt in September of that year. The Sea Breeze was seized by creditors in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and its passengers were flown home early. The ship ran into a bad storm off the coast of Virginia in December of 2000 while being towed by a tugboat to Charleston, South Carolina. The ship's hull was damaged by the boiler breaking off due to the storm. The ship started to list and absorb water. The crew prepared to leave the ship and issued a distress call. 2 helicopters and 2 airplanes from the U.S. Coast Guard reacted to the situation. The 34 crew members had to be rescued from the sinking ship while contending with 25-foot seas and 30-knot gusts. Several hoists and drops of rescue swimmers and baskets were used throughout the 4-hour rescue effort. All crew members were taken to shore in safety. Just after the last passenger was saved, the Sea Breeze flipped over and sank. On the ocean floor, it's now located at a depth of around 2,000 feet. It is one of the few modern cruise ships that have sunk as a result of a natural disaster. Number 4. The SS America. The SS America was a majestic ocean liner that sailed across the Atlantic for more than half a century. She was launched in 1939, sponsored by Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of the U.S. President. Under various names and flags, she served as a troop transport during World War II, a luxury cruise ship after the war, and a migrant carrier. In 1993, she was sold to a Thai company that planned to convert her into a floating hotel in Thailand. However, on her final voyage from Greece to Thailand in 1994, she encountered a severe storm that damaged her tow lines and engine. On January 18th, she ran aground off the west coast of Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands. She was abandoned by her owners and left to decay on the rocky shore. Over time, she was battered by the waves and wind, breaking into pieces and sinking into the sea. Only a small portion of her bow is now visible above water today. She's a sad reminder of her former glory and a haunting sight for locals and tourists alike. Number 3. The Sun Vista. The Sun Vista was a cruise ship that had a long and varied history. She was built in 1963 as the Galileo Galilei, an ocean liner that sailed between Italy and Australia. In 1979, she was converted into a cruise ship and renamed Galileo. She later became Meridian under Celebrity Cruises. In 1997, she was sold to Sun Cruises and renamed Sun Vista. She operated mainly in Southeast Asia, offering cruises to Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia. On May 20, 1999, she was on a 3-day cruise from Singapore to Penang with 1,090 passengers and crew on board. At around 10 p.m., a fire broke out in her engine room. The fire quickly spread and cut off all power and communications. The captain ordered everyone to abandon ship. The passengers and crew were evacuated by lifeboats and rafts. Some were rescued by nearby fishing boats and merchant ships. Others were picked up by helicopters and naval vessels. Fortunately, no one died or was seriously injured. The Sun Vista sank in the Strait of Malacca at 1:21 a.m. on May 21st after drifting for a while. She is currently submerged at a depth of roughly 230 feet, where she draws divers who wish to study her wreckage. The Sun Vista's demise serves as a terrible warning of the perils of fire at sea. It also serves as a tribute to their tenacity and teamwork. Number 2. The Carnival Triumph. The Carnival Triumph was a cruise ship that offered fun and excitement for its passengers. It had a multi-million-dollar upgrade in 2016 that added new restaurants, bars, and entertainment options. It was also one of the first ships to be larger than 100,000 gross tons. However, the Carnival Triumph had faced some difficulties throughout its history. In 2013, it suffered a fire that left it adrift for 4 days without power or sanitation. The passengers endured harsh conditions and nicknamed it the Poop Cruise. The ship was towed to Mobile, Alabama, where it underwent repairs. In 2019, the Carnival Triumph completed its final cruise before undergoing another major transformation. It entered dry dock in Cadiz, Spain, where it was renamed Carnival Sunrise and received new features and enhancements. It emerged as a new ship with a fresh look and feel. The Carnival Triumph was a ship that had both triumphs and tribulations. It provided memorable experiences for its guests, both good and bad. It also showed resilience and adaptability by changing with the times. And at number 1, the Celebrity Mercury. The Celebrity Mercury was a cruise ship that sailed for Celebrity Cruises from 1997 to 2011. It was known for its elegant design, spacious cabins, and diverse itineraries. However, it also faced several challenges and mishaps during its service. The Mercury's captain was detained for drunkenness on May 19, 2006, while being subjected to a normal safety check in Seattle. This event is one of the more well-known ones. Before a new captain could board, the ship's scheduled departure for an Alaskan tour was postponed for a number of hours. Another major setback happened in 2010, when more than 400 of the 2,600 passengers and crew on board the Mercury were struck by a norovirus outbreak. The virus causes vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach cramps. The ship had to cut its Caribbean voyage short and return to Charleston for sanitation. The final fate of the Mercury was sealed in 2011 when it was sold to TUI Cruises, a German cruise line. It was renamed Mein Schiff 2 and underwent extensive refurbishment. It continued to operate until 2019 when it was replaced by a newer ship with the same name. The wreckage of the Celebrity Mercury has now been divided into 3 sections in an alien ocean world. Its largest section lies on a slope bordering different biomes, while its smaller sections are located in other areas. It's a reminder of both its glory and tragedy as a cruise ship. Thanks for watching. Which one of these disasters shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.